Good morning. My name is Eli Howes. Can you please tell me your full name?
Good morning. My name is Orhan Hüseyinli. You can call me just Orhan.
So, in this first part, Orhan, I'd like to ask you some questions about yourself. Let's talk about where you live. Do you live in a house or a flat?
Well, currently I'm living in a flat that has a comfortable two-bedroom setup, complete with a well-equipped kitchen and a separate shower and bathroom area. The kitchen is so tiny you couldn't swing a cat around it. Regarding the bedrooms, they're quite spacious. We even make use of my bedroom as a living room when we have guests.
Do you have a favorite room in your home?
My bedroom is hands down my most favorite room in my home. It's both my sanctuary and office where I tackle my online classes with my students and prepare for my IELTS exams.
Do you think you will continue to live here in the future?
Well, I don't really know what the future holds. Actually, I'm planning to move to a different country down the line. It's just my childhood dream to live in the city of Istanbul, Turkey.
Let's move on. Let's talk about morning routines. Do you like to get up early in the morning?
In fact, I do. I'm the type of person that loves to get up bright and early. First of all, because I need to perform my daily prayer prescribed in the Quran, the holy book of Islam. And also, every time I get up early, I feel like it gives me the energy boost I need for the rest of the day.
Is your morning routine during the week and at the weekend similar?
Since I work 6 days a week, mm, when you say weekend, the only thing that comes to mind for me is Sunday. So for 6 days straight, they're pretty similar, I'd say. But for Sunday, it's quite different because on Sundays, I try not to work and study, but engage in some recreational activities such as playing soccer and dine out at restaurants with friends and family.
Which is your favorite morning in the whole week?
Well, Sunday mornings, obviously, because I get to sleep in, not to worry about my studies and my work, and the fact that I catch up with friends on Sundays, it just makes it more beautiful, I guess.
Do you want to change your daily routine in the future?
Um, you put me on the spot with that one. I guess it will automatically change because I'm planning to create my IELTS course down the line, and I just can't continue with the same routine. I think I will be more packed in the future than I'm now.
Let's move on. Let's talk about snacks. What snacks did you eat when you were young?
Well, I'm still young.
Younger.
Yes. Yeah. When I was younger and even now, I was all about chocolate. I'm addicted to it. Every time I get up, I like to get my chocolate fix and just start the day energetic. I usually prefer white chocolate, such as Alpengold White.
Do you often eat snacks nowadays?
Not as often as I used to because I'm trying to lead a healthy lifestyle and avoid stuff that has sugar in it, But sometimes I just can't help but consume. They're my guilty pleasure, to be honest.
We're going to move on to part two, and in this part, I'm going to give you a topic and I'd like you to talk about it for 1 to 2 minutes. Before you talk, you'll have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say, and you can make some notes if you wish. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
Here's your topic. You'll have 1 minute to prepare. All right. Remember, you have 1 to 2 minutes for this, so don't worry if I stop you. I'll tell you when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, I have a few childhood friends that I really like and I'm close with, but there's one in particular that deserves special notice. Rahib is his given name. He is a handsome blonde with blue eyes who stands around 1.7 meters tall, if I'm not mistaken. We've been friends with him since childhood. having grown up in the same neighborhood and attended the same school. He was just a new kid at our school, and I showed him around. Little did I know that this simple act of kindness would lead to an everlasting friendship, if you will. You know, I think one of the reasons why I'm so close with him because he knows a lot of stuff. He's very intelligent. Intelligent. It's always a mighty fine idea to be around him because he never fails to teach you something new. Sometimes I get the impression that there's nothing he doesn't know. You know. Um, Other than that, Rahip is very helpful, whether it's helping someone in need or doing some voluntary thing in the community. He's always there to lend a hand. You know, he just embodies the saying, "A friend in need is a friend indeed." Aside from that, we engage in lots of leisure activities with him, such as playing sports, PlayStation, and we also like to discuss new ideas with him while we stroll along the Caspian Sea in Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan, where we're living.
Thank you.
Um,
Do you think you will continue to be friends forever?
I hope so, you know, because I really can't imagine my life without him, you know. He's a kindred spirit.
Yes. So we've been talking about a good childhood friend, and I'd like to discuss with you one or two more general questions related to this. Let's consider, first of all, friendship over time. Do you think that the type of friends that we make and the activities that we do with friends changes as we grow older?
Well, they definitely do because as we age, our preferences evolve. You know, for instance, I had a few friends back in the day and would like to engage in certain activities, but we weren't able to continue our friendship because we're not interested in the same things anymore, you know?
Do you think that good friends always need to have things in common?
Well, you don't have to agree on everything, but you do need to have some shared interests. You know, I think that's what friendship is all about. You can't really be friends with someone that you have nothing in common with.
Why do you think it is that so many people retain good childhood friends?
Um, that's a head scratcher. Well, I guess because childhood friends have gone through the test of time, if you will, because they are the people that you can really count on and you can trust that they're not going to divulge your secrets because you have been with them for quite a long time. I think that's the main reason. And there's an emotional part of it too, because the people that we meet when we are childs, they tend to stay in our lives somehow. You know, we feel emotionally connected to them.
Do you think that technology changes friendship, or at least changes the way we connect with friends?
Yes, it definitely does. You know, back in the day, it was quite a hassle to keep in touch with friends who lived in different countries or in different cities, at least. But nowadays, with the advent of these technological tools, especially social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram, staying in touch with friends has become a breeze. For instance, I've been in touch with my American buddies even though I have left the United States for over a solid decade now.
Let's move on. Let's talk about acquaintances in the workplace. Do you think it's important for a manager to make an effort to ensure that all of the staff get on well together?
Well, it definitely is because you can't really have productive workers if they constantly argue with each other, especially at jobs that require a lot of teamwork, you know. Aside from that, I think when people get on well with each other, they can freely share their ideas and contribute to the success of their companies with their innovative ideas.
So, what can a manager or a boss do to cultivate friendship in the workplace?
Well, because I'm not a manager, it's a very tough question. but I'd say that they can organize some events like, a dinner at a restaurant after work or on weekends so that employees can get to know one another better. Aside from that, they can maybe organize some sports events, because these are the sport events are the things that help people develop certain valuable skills such as communication, leadership, and these are very valuable at work. And also, the more time you spend with people, the more likely you are to become friends with them.
Thank you very much. That is the end of the speaking test.
Yep.
Very nice speaking test. Very impressive.
Thank you.
So you recently did your IELTS speaking test. You did it with IDP, is that right?
Yes.
IDP, and you got band 9 in your speaking test with IDP. Could you tell us a little bit about some tips that you would give students aiming for such a high score?
Well, first of all, there are certain topics on IELTS that frequently appear, about 40. People usually dig in more topics, they find more topics, but there are like 40 topics that really appear. 30 of them are very important, like music, art, environment, and so on. And there's some extra topics, like only for part one speaking, fishing, snacks, and so on. So they need to identify these topics and work on them.
And when you say work on them,
Aside from that,
what's the best way to work on a topic, would you say?
well, first of all, they need to use AI to work on their questions. You can't really find quality questions and answers on the internet. They're not really available. What I would do is I would use Quillbot. Is that okay to use a name, advertise something here? Yeah, Quillbot. Yeah, and I really advise them to use its premium version because it has academic, formal, anything you want, for their writing section. I would use Quillbot. After watching actually Roy on your channel from Lebanon,
yes.
He used a lot of idioms. I was impressed by it, but I was not really going to memorize a lot of idioms. I just used Quillbot custom section, and you can type in idiomatic language, and it automatically turns it to idiomatic language. Like for instance, you can type in, "I don't understand why something happened." It will say, "I can't wrap my head around why something happened." And it would create a lot of, and also I asked ChatGPT to tell me 10 main questions, let's say on the topic of shopping, and it would appear, and I would learn ideas. Some of the questions you can't really talk naturally about. You need to have ideas. Aside from that, for part two, I think that's the most difficult part of the speaking section. I memorized a lot of part two, to be honest.
Sure.
Like for homes, for instance, even if you ask me to talk about a home in my native language, I'm sure I'm not going to be able to talk about it at a band 9 level. So they need to memorize at least 5 of them, like something, the hardest ones, architecture, homes, and some questions. And then when they talk about, let's say, other topics, they can, connect them. Like for instance, I memorized a part 2 question about visiting a foreign country. And then when I was asked to talk about an interesting part of my country in the real test, I just used the sentences, the band 9 vocabulary that I used in that speaking part 2 that I had memorized. So there are a lot of ways.
Yes, and I would like to say what you did is clever because you took chunks of language, maybe phrases, maybe even entire sentences, and then you applied them to different topics. And that's a good thing to do. I wouldn't recommend taking one part 2 topic speech, for example, a 2-minute speech, and then applying it to different part 2 topics, because that's when you can be unrelated to the question or tangential. So definitely take phrases and sentences perhaps from different part 2 topics, but don't memorize one part 2 topic for 7 different questions. For example, when I was in China, I had students that would try and memorize one part 2 topic to cover many different question types. So they would talk about a time they visited their friend, who's their best friend from childhood, who they ate a cake with, who afterwards they went to a party. And then what they did is they had this same topic if they had to talk about a cake, a childhood friend, a party, an evening event. And as a result, their part 2 topic didn't especially apply to any of these topics. It was too vague and they would get lower scores. So I think, yes, take sentences, but don't memorize entire topics and try and fit them into different part 2 questions.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, that's not what I was trying to do, and that's not what I did.
Yes, exactly. And just to kind of clarify that for students, because I know some students are quite keen to. Yes. And what about part 3? Because your part 3 was very impressive.
Yeah, like I said, I used ChatGPT. It would give me a lot of ideas because I watched your video. You were talking about the Miro program, the Miro.
Oh yeah,
Miro or Miro?
Yeah, Miro. Yeah.
Yeah, but I couldn't use it. I don't know why, because I don't know. My computer skills are limited, I guess. But instead I used ChatGPT. Yeah, it would give me a lot of ideas. I would say, tell me how I could say this in an idiomatic way or in a more formal way or something like this, and tell me ideas. For instance, how can individuals contribute to climate change, or how can they reduce their carbon footprint?
Yes. Clever, very clever. You really, that you said you were going to do an IELTS course. It sounds like your IELTS course could be how to use AI to boost your IELTS score.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Sounds promising. Now, you are also one of the rare people who have scored band 8 in IELTS writing. What tips do you have for IELTS writing?
IELTS writing, it's a headache, to be honest. It's a headache. And I think people, first of all, need to introduce themselves to different essay topics, and also not topics, but the structures, the opinion essays, agree or disagree, advantages, disadvantages. They need to know about that. They have to have a structure memorized in their mind so that they don't lose time on thinking, because your time is very limited. And then they need to avoid writing background statements. You don't need that to score a band 8. I didn't write it. Maybe for band 8.5 or 9, I'm not sure, but for an 8, it's definitely okay not to include a background statement.
Do you mean in the
Yes, they can just paraphrase the question and say their opinions. And it's very crucial. You have to express your opinion at least 3 times throughout the essay. And you have to include examples. You have to read those band descriptors first, what they require. Because people just keep right. That's what I used to do back in the day. They don't really know. And they need to time themselves when they write their essays. They need to be honest with themselves. Not that, okay, I'm going to get it done in the real test, but now I can do it without timing myself. That's not going to work. Because IELTS is 70% about developing habits. And other than that, I think, okay, what I did, of course, that was very interesting because I came up with it later and I was very surprised about it. You take a lot of essay topics, and in those topics, let's say people say that the only way to deal with climate change is reducing one's carbon footprint. To what extent do you agree or disagree? You can just take this and find synonyms for the word climate change, at least 4. I would write them. I worked on 100 main topics, and I found synonyms for crucial words so that I wouldn't find it hard to paraphrase the question. And you don't really just paraphrase the question once. You use words for climate change throughout the essay, like global warming, climate crisis, climate change itself, and so many others.
Very smart. And I bet you used AI and ChatGPT to do that as well.
Toolbox, mainly.
Right. Okay.
And ChatGPT sometimes. Yeah.
Very smart. It sounds like you've been very, very deliberate and considered in your preparation for the IELTS test.
Yeah.
So, how about the reading test? What are your tips for people doing the reading test?
First of all, I don't really see myself in a position to talk about reading much because my first exam, before I took the retake, it was 7.5, and I'm waiting for the next exam's results. It's going to be over 8, I guess. I think for reading, you have to know about, again, different question structures. You have to have tips for all of them. And you have to pay attention. Some people advise to just read everything. You don't have to read everything, Maybe for matching headings for certain essay question types, you can read everything, but you don't really have time. Skim and scan, I think that's the best, unless you have to read. Aside from that, I think questions highlighting is very essential because you can go over questions again and check if you have mistakes. And I really advise people to do the reading on computer delivered IELTS tests because on a paper, it's really a headache to turn the paper back and forth all the time. But on a computer, it's very easy. Just you even highlight, and you don't get that on paper. You can't really highlight. You can underline, but you can't really highlight.
But I do find that highlighting takes longer on a computer compared to doing, like, for example, underlining something on the paper.
Maybe, but I used to do paper-based, but then I thought that for writing and reading, it was very hard. Then I switched to computer delivery, especially for writing. You write and delete, you erase. It's very hard.
And what about listening? What are your tips for IELTS listening?
Well, I scored an 8.5 from listening, and I used some good tips. And I think the reason why I didn't score a 9 because I missed something when I was because on the computer test you can miss when you type. I think a big number one tip is that listen carefully to the speaker, what they're saying, and read the questions carefully. If they require one word, 2 words, or whatever. And there's one tip, I think that's an original tip that I haven't shared anywhere and I haven't seen anywhere so far, is that guess how the question might try to trick you. When you read the question, it says, like, for instance, what was one thing that the examiners didn't mention about London, for instance? And you're like, okay, it can trick me by putting other names of the cities, other cities or something else or something they mentioned. You have to guess how they might trick you. I know it's very hard. It's a headache, but
it's a very good piece of advice because, for example, there's a lot of spelling and writing down telephone numbers. And one common trick that examiners play is they start spelling a word and then they change the spelling, or they start saying a number and then they change that number. And so it's good to be aware of those kind of tricks.
Yeah. And do a lot of listening tests just to get used to it.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much for coming on today and sharing all of your wonderful tips. I really appreciate that. And again, congratulations on doing so well in the IELTS test. Big thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was so nice of you.